Welcome. I'm your host, Dustin,
And I'm your co-host, Dean of the Dead.
and joining us today for night two of our Losers Club series is Jared Blancard and Bart Mixon. As we discuss what it was like on set and how it was with everything that followed with the years after to present day, we're going to be taking a deep dive into the Barrens together. So, how's everybody going? I guess we'll start with Bart. How you doing?
Oh, very good. Thanks. Happy to be here. As you'll discover during this conversation, I love talking about it. So I'm raring to go.
Awesome. What about you, Jared? How you doing?
Wonderful. Like I said, I'm just I finally saw the documentary myself. Am honored to have been a part of the original film and to be a part of a great documentary about which some people consider to be a seminal kind of television event. And happy to be here with you guys as well. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here. This is really a dream come true to myself and Dean. We got to chat with John and Gary when the documentary came out. Then we talked to Brandon and Ben a couple weeks back, and now we got Bart and Jared on. So I mean, we're just making our rounds through everybody who was part of the film. It was
And possibly Marlon as well.
yeah, possibly
He
Marlon.
may
He
jump
might.
in.
He might. Yeah.
He may jump in somewhere down the line.
I'll
Yeah.
believe it when I see it.
Yeah.
It's so
You know,
funny.
everyone said that so far as well. No, was he supposed to be on with Gary and John? Oh no, that was with Ben and
That was with
Brandon.
Brandon and Ben, yeah. So that was the last time.
They said
Yep.
the same thing. Yeah, they were like, wait until right at the very end when we're just signing off. Marlon will jump in and go, hey, I'm here.
Yeah.
So,
But yeah, this really is, another dream come true with having to talk to other people that are part of really my childhood. It was a huge part of my childhood. I saw it on TV when I was young. And then I couldn't finish it my first time through, and then I had to watch it maybe 3 or 4 other times to finally get through the whole thing. And once I did, I had nightmares for days. So I mean, that's all to everybody we've been talking to, like Bart and Jared. You guys were my nightmares, but it was good. It was good nightmares because it made me who I am today.
Just doing our jobs. So.
Yes, exactly. And one thing I kind of like to do with anybody that we have on the show is I like to kind of bring it back to the beginning. So Bart, I wanted to ask you, where did getting to special effects and makeup, when did that all begin?
Pretty much as a kid. I mean, I guess I grew up in the 60s. So I guess I was what they now call a monster kid. I was a fan of Famous Monsters and magazine and, Ray Harryhausen movies. The original King Kong's my all-time favorite movie.
Oh wow.
I was a big Marvel Comics fan, particularly a Jack Kirby fan. So I just started making my own Super 8 movies when I was a kid in the early 70s and learned a lot of wrong ways to do crude makeup effects and eventually learned the right way, going to comic book conventions in Houston, which is where I'm from. Rick Baker was a guest there in 1977, and he gave me his contact information, and we stayed in touch. And I visited him over the years, and continued to practice, and then slowly got work on real shows. In the early 80s, stuff like RoboCop, where Rick had introduced me to Rob Bottin. And that was all while I was still living in Texas. Like I worked on Chainsaw 2 and RoboCop, and then I moved out to LA and been there in LA since '87. So
Wow.
been a pro since 86. So
Wow. What about you, Jared? Where did it all kind of begin with you with acting? I know that you were really young when it came out, but was there anything that followed before it that kind of took place?
Well, a lot of community theater. Actually, it was my third audition, my third professional audition.
Oh wow.
I just got signed to an agency, and I think I'd done one Canadian American co-production, a guest starring role in a little-known television series, and then right after that, was informed by my agent that I had this wonderful opportunity to audition for a major role in the Stephen King's It, and of course I can't describe to you the feeling, the feeling of overwhelming pressure at being a huge Stephen King fan to begin with.
Oh,
Yeah.
Was you a horror fan way back then, Jared, as well? Was it like?
Oh yeah, I didn't want. Yeah, I didn't want anything to do with my education. All I did was actually spend as much time as I possibly could in the library, and no word of a lie, devoured every Stephen King novel. In particular, like the first 5 were the basis for my first ventures into the literary world. So
some of that's quite heavy reading at a young age as well, isn't it? Especially the It novel. It's huge. Such a
yeah, and The Shining also was particularly impactful.
yeah.
But his first 5 books, I think, are probably, well, some of the all-time classics in terms of the genre. But I mean, he's got to be given greater credence in terms of his literary output as a whole. He's much more than a horror writer. Shouldn't be ghettoized. I think he's extraordinary.
Oh, I agree. And I'm a madman, and I've read through the It book about 8 times.
Oh my,
yeah.
really?
Throughout my whole life, I've read it, and I love it every time because there's so much to it, and you always pick up new things. So that's
very true.
What really kind of sparked my interest with Stephen King, because that was the first book I ever read from him. I think my mom gave it to me, and then because I watched the miniseries or the movie first, and then she was like, this was based off of a book, and I was really, really young. I was still in school. I think I was in middle school, and she bought me the book, and I actually still have it. It's actually right over there, and I read through it every now and then, not the whole thing, but I pick certain chapters. I'm like, I'm gonna go revisit this, and every time I read it, I'm like, I need to go back and watch the 1990 movie now. It's such a great film. And Jared, I'm sorry that you listened to our verses episode on the new one and the old one, but regardless of whatever we said in that one, like the 1991, it always holds a much better and stronger place in my heart.
Oh, don't apologize. I was just trying to give you a hard time. No, because it's funny because inevitably what happens is when the new films came out, people tend to revisit the original film. And I have to tell you guys, I mean, for a very, very long period of time, I thought the film had disappeared into the ether. I thought it had suffered the fate of many a television movie until it was finally released on videotape. I walked into Blockbuster one day, which is the 2 churches that I belong to are the library and the video store, which they no longer exist, unfortunately, because Blockbuster was a great pleasure to go into. And as I said, I thought the film had disappeared into the ether, and then one day it got released on video, and it experienced, again, a complete resurgence in terms of its popularity and availability, obviously.
Oh yeah, for sure. Dean, I don't know if you had any questions that you throw in right now before I jump to my next one.
I'm good. I guess, Bart, you were talking about when you were sort of taking it back a minute ago. One of the questions I was going to say were, who were your main influences? You mentioned like Ray Harryhausen. Who were kind of your main influences when you were sort of trying to get your own sort of style?
Well, I was a huge Rick Baker fan. So he at least made it seem obtainable in terms of having a career like this, because he was only 8 years older, or he is only 8 years older than I. But certainly growing up, I mean, Jack Pierce and the original Planet of the Apes with John Chambers,
Right, yeah.
the William Tuttle's Seven Faces of Dr. Lowe, which got an Oscar in 64 for makeup, where Tony Randall plays like 6, he plays multiple characters, which I think that was the first time it kind of dawned on me, like what a makeup artist, that how they can transform, actors into, various characters. And so those kind of things planted the seed. But then Famous Monsters magazine had an article on Rick Baker in around 1970. And up until that point, I thought it was like an old man's game. I mean, I was like 12 years old. And so all the professional, people you saw in the photos, they were all, older guys, which they were probably like 30 or something, but they all had lab coats and ties, and just kind of looked like I guess just adults. And then Rick was 18 at the time, and was I think just on schlock. And like I thought, the design wise, the ape and schlock I thought was much better than anything in Planet of the Apes, just sculpturally and that sort of thing. So, and again, it's like this guy was a kid basically, and was doing his stuff as good or better in my eyes than the pros, or the established guys. So at least it made it seem like it was possible for somebody like me. But he lived in LA, I lived in Texas, so I still had other hurdles to overcome. But so probably I'm lifelong Rick Baker fan. But then also, I mean, just a fan of makeup in general. So I mean, again, Dick Smith and John Chambers, and as the years went by, guys like Rob Bottin and Greg Canham, and you name it. So just I like good makeup. So
Yeah,
I don't know why
I agree
I
on
like
that.
I like gluing rubber on people's heads, which is probably kind of weird sickness, but anyway, it's a living.
Hey, it's a great one. I mean, you create all these amazing creatures and characters. I mean, working with Tim Curry, how was it with working with him and being able to mold his face into what it is that we see now on the movie?
Right. Well, obviously fantastic. I mean, you couldn't ask for a better collaborator, with that kind of a makeup. I mean, some makeups are, they're monster makeups, and it doesn't really matter, who's under it. But then you have more of the character type makeups, and like Freddy Krueger without Robert Englund isn't really Freddy Krueger. And,
Yeah.
Tim. I remember a friend of mine when Legend came out. A friend of mine was like, "Why'd they bury Tim Curry under all that makeup, for that devil?" Like, and it's like, you need an actor of his caliber to be able to act through that stuff and live. And so all these, I mean, that's why those are memorable characters or memorable makeups, because you've got a strong actor behind it. I mean, going back to the Karloff Frankenstein and the Lawton, Hunchback. So, I mean, it's a nice, when you're working together, and certainly Tommy Lee Wallace was part of the mix too. So, it was a nice collaboration of, trying to satisfy what Tommy wanted and make Tim happy, and, then trying to get some of what I wanted in there. So, but I mean, he was, the ultimate, pro, and, he had his ideas of how much he wanted to wear or how little. Due in part, I'm sure, to Legend, and being, from the waist up. So he wanted as light of an approach as possible. And then, Tommy and I wanted certain things like the shape of the head and, whatnot. So, it's a collaborative art. So there were some compromises, but I think ultimately all the right choices were made. And again, starting with Tim, being the foundation. So
from the minute Tim sat in the chair, how long would it take to sort of create the makeup around him, like from the minute it sat down to when it go off?
That's a good question. It seemed like everything I did back then took 3 hours, which when I think back now, that seems too long, but so maybe we got it. I mean, you get faster, through repetition, so it may have, we may have gotten it down to, 2. I don't really recall, because that was 1990.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of, I mean, it's pretty simple. I mean, it's just the headpiece and the prosthetic nose, but I wanted the white in the, the foundation to be a pure white. I didn't want any of his skin tone reading through. So we used what's called Pax paint, which Dick Smith developed for Dustin Hoffman and Tootsie, so it wouldn't rub off on his white nurse's uniform. But it's acrylic paint and acrylic prosthetic grade glue. So that took a couple of layers to get a nice even coat and to opaque out his, skin tone. So it was, it was kind of slow going, building up those layers, and then all the brow and the mouth and all that stuff I drew by hand, which, thinking back, I don't know why I didn't make a template, because that was such a pain in the ass drawing those eyebrows. And if you look at stills or in the movie, they do evolve and change. Some of them, the first ones are more of an S curve, and then they kind of, smooth out. And, so I think the first probably 5 days that we did him, he continued to evolve a little. But at least with the Pax as a base, if I screwed something up, I could just paint over it and then do it. I think I may have even used a Sharpie, to draw the eyebrow.
There you go.
But so there was a lot of like handwork that you had to be, pretty clean and pretty precise. I think my assistant, I think she did like the eyeliner and stuff for me, and so there were two of us, doing it. But anyway, so I don't know, between 2 and 3 hours, probably closer to 3, but
That's not too bad though.
Not bad.
no, but I mean, again, there's not as I've done a lot more complicated makeups, since then. So I've gotten faster,
Yeah, for sure.
probably gotten more confident. That was fairly early in my career. So, and I think I was probably a little starstruck, nervous, just working on Tim.
I would have been too.
I mean, yeah, and I mean, I'd worked like with Shelley Winters prior to that, and Peter Weller on RoboCop, but Tim Curry was, I think, the first time I was, like a fan, and again, like just like starstruck, where I was like, oh my God, it's Tim Curry, And I love Peter Weller, but when I did Robo with him, I don't even think I'd seen Buckaroo Banzai, so I was like, I wasn't as in awe as I might have been later on, but Tim Curry was Tim Curry, so
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. What about you, Jared? What was it working with Tim Curry on set?
My first encounter with Tim Curry was probably not dissimilar to every other young person's encounter with him. I just remember being on a very drab set. Drab not in terms of the design or dressing, just the color scheme was drab. So when I encountered him, you can imagine my reaction, because you have this extraordinarily, I mean, he almost glowed with the whiteness of his face and the bright colors of his costume. And I remember distinctly wanting to cut a wide berth for a combination of reasons, much like Mr. Mixon's reaction. There's the idea of starstruck, because I went and saw the Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time just prior to starting the film. And also because of the character and the characterization. There's a genuine trepidation to approach him. And I did. I tried to avoid him, but he knew my name, and he stopped what he was doing, looked right at me, and he said in his Pennywise voice, "Hello, Jared." I mean, I can't
That's
in
awesome.
any way replicate. Yeah, it was startling, and I didn't even know. I think I said, "Oh, hello, Mr. Curry. Nice to meet you." Yeah. So what a presence is all I have to say. And it's, as Mr. Mixon was suggesting, it goes beyond. I mean, the makeup is absolutely extraordinary. I think it's a magnificent achievement. And I will say this before I forget. I think, to be honest with you, I don't think it was topped by the recent films, because I look at it graphically, and that's the way I kind of measure my great cinematic villains. And if they represent well two-dimensionally in terms of a graphic image, to me that's a sign of staying power. And there's just, as I said, I don't think there's a comparison graphically between the original Pennywise and the latter version. Not to disparage the other film.
Thank you. I'm glad you said that. I can't say that, but
Sure you can, Bart. Come on.
No. I thought they did a good job with the new one, but yeah, I'm biased. I like mine better. So what the hell?
Yeah, I gotta back you up on that, Mr. Mixon. I gotta tell you, because I really did study the new film pretty extensively, and I wanted to compare. And as I said, I loved. I think that I shouldn't be getting into this. I'd let you guys direct the interview, but yeah, as I said, I scrutinize these things. I'm a huge fan of Mr. Mixon's work and every other artist he's mentioned, obviously Bottin and Mr. Baker and all of them. And again, they a few of them have. I don't know. There's always one distinct creature for each creator. But yeah, doing a comparison, as I said, when I'm sure you guys have gone to conventions, etc. When you see the image of Pennywise, say on a poster or on a shirt, it's indelible, instantly recognizable. Oh yeah, that's yes. My compliments to you, my friend. I'm envious.
Thank you.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah, I do have a
Love it.
couple of Pennywise stuff behind me. I actually have both versions, but the one that's way up there, it's a little bit hard to see. It's a new one, but it has the 1990s Pennywise in it. But right behind everything They have the original one. It's hidden. I gotta flip them.
Yeah.
I do like both. Looks on all of them, and they're both unique in their own way. But
Mm.
yeah, the original ones scared me way more than the remake, for sure.
Yeah, I think me too, man. I'm a much bigger fan of the original.
Yeah, and it
I've
all
got
has
a
to do
huge,
with Tim too.
I've got a huge poster as well in my kitchen that I've collecting autographs. So I've got you on there, Jared. I haven't got you on there yet, but I've got some of the other losers on there, and it's the original front cover of the movie. It scares the hell out of my kids, and I love it. You see, they won't go in the kitchen. My son's like, "I want to go in the kitchen." That clown's staring at me.
Amazing.
I do think maybe with the new one they maybe tried too hard to make him look creepy, whereas again for me it was always it was a story point that this clown was supposed to be something that would lure innocent children in, and I think the new one is a cool makeup, but it just looks creepy as hell from the word go. So there's no way a kid would go anywhere near that thing.
Exactly.
Whereas with what we did on Tim, he's able to turn it from innocent or harmless to threatening through his performance. And again, I think in service of the story, that's an important aspect of it. So, but I think the new one's a cool makeup. I'll name drop. I worked with Jermaine Clement on Men in Black 3, and we've stayed in touch. And when the new It came out, he sent me an email and he said, "Oh, you seen Pennywise?" He goes, "I just copied yours." And I'm like, "Well, it's right." And I mean, there's some similarities just by virtue of being clowns, but I mean, I thought they did a nice job. I wish I could have worked on it, but
of course,
you can't. I'm a huge Jermaine Clement fan, man. I love Jermaine Clement. I think he's great.
We could do a whole podcast just about
it. Man. Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the Concords. Oh yeah, I love those guys, and all the What We Do in the Shadows as well. Yeah. Big fans of those guys.
Another thing too is I have a 4-year-old son and he loves Pennywise. I tried watching 1990 movie with him, but he gets too scared of watching movies. But he watches a lot of YouTube videos of people doing costumes and makeup and looking at all the toys. He's really comfortable with that. But the movies, no. But he always goes. But if he had to pick a Pennywise, it's always in 1991. So I guess I did good on that side.
Exactly. Good boy. Well, I mean, the one we did was 1990s television. So we had those limitations in terms of the censorship and, the running time. So I am a little envious of the new one, because when you have parts 1 and 2 of the new version, it's 4.5 hours versus the 3 hours that we had. And that's a hell of a book to squeeze into 4.5 hours, much less 3. And then they've got, an R-rated 2000, 17 censorship or lack of censorship versus 1990s television censorship. So they, I would have liked to have been able to bite Georgie's arm off, and they did a lot of stuff in that would have been fun to have done, but I don't think the 1991 would be any better with more blood and stuff in it. So it's again, it's I guess you had to be maybe a little more creative working within those limitations. But again, I thought Tommy did a swell job, and I'm happy to have been a part of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I don't like to forget about Tommy Lee Wallace's pedigree as well. I think any horror fan knows, as I did when walking onto that set. I mean, his background with John Carpenter, his contribution to the original Halloween mustn't be forgotten. He's basically responsible for creating Michael Myers as we know him.
Right.
His editing on The Fog, which is brilliant. I love that film. I think it's finally coming to gain the recognition that it deserves.
Yep, I agree.
Carpenter's a genius, obviously. So yeah, Tommy Lee Wallace he's got, and he's directed 2 sequels to films that are regarded as finally being regarded as classics unto themselves. I mean, Halloween 3 now is really being revisited and reclassified, I'd like to say, and his Fright Night 2 as well is a sequel of merit.
Yes.
Not an easy thing to go into an existing franchise and direct the sequel and come out as well as he did. So
for sure,
that was the first time I worked with Tommy. He was on Fright Night 2. So
really? Okay.
Yeah. So we already had a working relationship by the time it came along. I was working with Gene Warren at Fantasy 2 film effects. Eugene unfortunately died a couple of years ago, but I set up. He wanted to compete like with Boss Films and have a creature shop capabilities as well as the miniatures and opticals and whatnot that Fantasy 2 normally did. So I set up his creature shop for him for Fright Night 2, our first real project. We might have done one or two little things prior to that, but so that's where I met Tommy. So we already had a good working relationship. So when it came along, it just made sense to go back to Fantasy 2, which then meant me being in the mix as well. So
brilliant.
But Tommy, I guess I've done 4 shows with Tommy, back in the late 80s, early 90s. So
Awesome.
he was always a treat to work.
Amazing. Yeah, lovely gentleman as well.
Yeah, and going back to Halloween as well, Michael Myers is my favorite. I don't know if you can tell, but I have a bunch of masks behind me.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I spotted him behind you.
Yeah, so my first horror movie that I saw that scared the crap out of me. So yep, that took over my life.
What he did with that William Shatner mask and for Halloween.
Yeah, I think there was actually a video on YouTube of him kind of going back and showing how he did it. That's really, really cool. Through like an actual old Shatner mask, which is really, really cool.
Post Star Trek. Yeah, I think he just cut the eye holes and they cut the Star Trek sideburns off of it.
Yeah.
Painted it white.
Super simple, but it came out terrifying. Dean, I don't want to keep going over any questions that you have, so I guess I'll let you throw any to the floor if you have them.
No, you're good, man. If I can just hop in, I've got some here, but I'm just because I know we're going in between talking about the movie and the makeup, so I'm just kind of hopping in where necessary. You're good, man.
All right. I always like to ask this question too about anybody we talk to who's ever on a film. Jared, we can start with you. Do you have a favorite memory on or off set?
Oh gosh. On set, it would have to be there was a set that was an old steelworks mill, and it was just ready-made to be used in this capacity in the film. It reminded me of something out of Blade Runner, which is one of my other all-time favorite films, and just in terms of atmosphere. You walked on and you thought they didn't have to do anything to dress it. You had the old filings on the ground, the old works rusted and all over the place, and just walking, it felt, if this makes sense, that you were on an epic film set. There's nothing false about it. It wasn't on a studio. It was absolutely astounding, and that's where I actually confront Ben and eventually drag him into the sewer and cut the buttons off of his shirt. And then off the set, strangely, Green Epstein, who produced the film, invited me to come out to Los Angeles. They wanted to act in a managerial capacity. So I moved out there and lived out there for 5 years and became roommates with Seth Green.
There's a lot of stories there, I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, the misadventures that him and I got into were incredible. He was he was freshly emancipated from his mother. And me coming from a working class background, I had a lot of liberty as a kid growing up. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with the film Colors, directed by Dennis Hopper, starring Robert Duvall. There was a lot of gang activity in Los Angeles when I first moved out there. And my first suggestion to Seth was, let's go out to Compton. And we did, rather stupidly, and got pulled over by a cop and said, you guys don't look like you belong here. I'm going to give you a police escort out. And he did, and we continued to go back. So, but yeah, like I said, that was one of those relationships that's very rare in the film world, as Mr. Mixon probably attest to. Is, well, maybe not in the sort of makeup consortium, but in terms of an actor, it's rare that you go on to form relationships that last beyond the film. It's a rather gypsy-like existence. You know, you're a mercenary. You've got to get on to finding your next job.
Yeah, for sure.
Are you guys still in contact now, Jared?
No, I haven't talked to him in a long, long time, unfortunately. And like I said, we traveled in two very, very different directions. I think Seth is very much a journeyman. He was an old pro by the time he was working on it, and his instinct for survival, even during the downtimes, was remarkable. So just two very different directions. I lived in LA for 5 years, but I never felt like I belonged there, to be honest with you. it was a great adventure. And I, at a certain point, I just thought, in consulting a lawyer to get an O1 visa, which is what I needed, I got one for the first 5 years, and they said, when you come back for another one, it's highly unlikely you're going to get one because they believe that Canadians are taking away jobs from Americans.
Oh
Unfortunately,
wow.
you'll probably have to
Wow.
end up being Eric Clapton to get one. So at about year 4, I thought, okay, I'm just gonna. Are we allowed to swear on your podcast?
Yep. No, not
Oh, yeah.
censored here
Okay.
at all.
Okay, I year 4, and anyone that associated with me can attest to this. I said, I'm just going to burn this motherfucker down. I'm just going to live life to the fullest in the in the fat city. So yeah. Anyway, sorry that was a bit lengthy, guys. I do apologize.
Oh, don't worry. I love listening to these stories, and Brandon had a lot of funny stories. He said one also with Seth of dropping balloons from his
That's right. Yeah.
from his room, and it was
Oh,
getting
yeah.
A lot of
deported.
Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid
Oh,
filled
yeah.
balloons onto
Oh yeah,
cars with the or convertible cars with the roof down.
lots of
Oh, man.
mischief.
Be kids again, you know.
Oh god, yeah.
But what about you, Bart? Do you have any memories or favorite memories on or off set?
Gee, that's a good question. It was all such a blur. I mean, let's see. I remember, I guess, when we were shooting, I remember the trailer. Tim wouldn't let us listen to Rocky Horror Picture Show soundtrack. I did have a Best of Tim Curry cassette that he was cool with that, but he was tired of Rocky at the time. I think Madonna's Vogue was out then, so him and my assistant would listen to that, and we'd be voguing together. So seeing Tim Curry without the wig, partially Pennywise stuff made up. So that was kind of fun. But and otherwise not. I mean, again, it was a great time, but yeah, I don't know that anything. I wasn't dropping balloons or anything like that. We did have I was hoping something would have happened, but didn't. When I would try, I built the show in Burbank and we shot in Vancouver. And so I'd have to fly back and forth at least once a week for production meetings. And then when we were filming, to, go up with those whatever prosthetics, we needed, so I had this trunk that, it'd have my Pennywise wigs and appliances and maybe a werewolf mask or whatever was working. And typically the custom people, didn't mean to hit my laptop, the custom guys would look through it and, oh, what do you got in here, and kind of dig through stuff. So when we were doing Stan's head in the refrigerator, I got the severed head in the trunk, and then that was the one time they didn't want to look through it, and I'm like, hey, don't you want to look in the trunk? And they're like, no, it's all right. And it's like, oh, so the one time I'm hoping they're going to be like, what the hell's this? And then they're just like, go on,
Oh
So
man.
could have been a good story, but but I certainly, I mean, just working with Tim, it was a treat. It was a great time. So, but I don't know that anything specific. Finally getting to do the battery acid makeup. I mean, I was very grateful, that we
Yeah.
got to do that. But that was done in post down in Burbank. Doing some inserts and pickups. Which again, I've mentioned this before. I'm forever grateful to Tim for that, because when we shot the sequence in Canada, they didn't think they had time to turn Tim over in the makeup, so we just shot that whole scene with him in the regular clown makeup, and they were prepared to use it that way in the movie. They weren't going to do the transition, and we had to make a little stop motion puppet of Tim, like an 18-inch, for a couple of shots of him going down the drain. He kind of elongates as he goes in the hole. And we sculpted that to look like Tim's regular clown look. And literally the day I got the front half of the mold made, so it's in stone. And then they came back, the head guys at Fantasy 2 came back and said, okay, we're going to do some reshoots. We're going to use the battery acid look in the reshoots. And so then I had to make a miniature prosthetic, for this little stop motion puppet to change it to look like the battery acid look. But I believe that was all left up to Tim. He had seen the prosthetics in Canada, but so he was aware that I'd made them. But I think they kind of pitched it to Tim, like, if you don't mind, we'd like to reshoot this piece of the sequence with you in this makeup, but if you don't want to wear it, were happy not to. And he's like, well, Bart he was very complimentary about, the work I'd done. And he's like, it'd be a shame not to use it. So if we can get it done in one day, he agreed to wear it. So, we had to shoot, which is only, 3 or 4 cuts, but so we did all that like on the insert stage in Fantasy 2. But he very easily could have just said, you know what, I don't feel like putting all that crap on. We were doing regular Pennywise inserts, like him coming up out of the drain in the shower.
Great scene, by the way.
His coverage on that was shot in Burbank. But anyway, so he easily could have declined to wear it. So I'm I wouldn't have a T-shirt, like this. This would just be.
I love it so much.
That.
Yeah. So
cool. I love that.
So again, I'm forever grateful to Tim for, biting the bullet and letting us torture him that much for that day. So.
Looking back at it now, is there anything that you wish you could kind of go back and change that you would have done slightly differently, or you're happy with the way it's? I mean, obviously it's classic what you've come up with there. Is there anything you think you wish you could go back and tweak a bit?
I mean, from a technical aspect, because we had to duplicate, we duped the mold for the headpiece. So on one of the molds, I didn't get a great edge up here, which I think in the context of the movie, it doesn't really matter, but just for me personally, I should have done like a blender appliance, to help soften that. So maybe some technical stuff, but I'm certainly happy with the way it looks and the decisions that were made in terms of the paint schemes and all that. I mean, it's the in the documentary, I think they have some pictures of my original concept busts, and what Tommy had approved was one that had more graphic, like big blue eyeshadow, and it actually had cheekbones and a chin, which is why the battery acid look has got more of an exaggerated cheek and chin, and also why it has the I'll indicate this was meant to be like to mirror the it would have had the blue eyeshadow over here, and so this was meant to be like a 3D representation of that, because when I sculpted that makeup, the approved look had the cheekbones and all that. So, but then when they decided to use it, there wasn't time to resculpt it. But no, I mean, I'm very happy, with the way it turned out, obviously. So I'm not, no, I wouldn't have changed a thing. I maybe, I know, like people, not to harp on my spider, but my spider gets a lot of shit. But that's what Stephen King wrote. But probably, which Tommy even says, like, who knew that, Tim Curry, while making it, they didn't really realize how much he was going to be missed during that last, 15 or 20 minutes of the movie. So I think story-wise, after they wound the spider and then it goes off and then they go in and beat it to death, had it turned back into Tim, at that point, it probably would have been a more satisfying ending had there been one more confrontation. But I don't think 1990s TV would have let 3 adults beat the shit out of a clown and rip his heart out.
Imagine that, though.
But and they kind of addressed that in the remake, where I think even though he's got like the big spider legs at the end of the first part, they do try to to get it more of a Pennywise spider hybrid. Although I think in part 2 of the remake, I think it looks too much like a Tim Burton character and not enough,
I agree.
Not enough like a, but so had there been some way that we could have worked Tim into that finale, I think would have helped. But again, hindsight. So
Yep, for sure. And since we've been kind of lightly talking about the documentary, how does it feel to be, part of something that really is legendary, and it is a legacy? Like it's everybody says this is Tim Curry's legacy, but I always view it as this is everybody who worked on the film's legacy because of how big it is, especially now. Like Jared, you were pointing and talking about how you thought it kind of just disappeared, and seeing this huge like resurgence, mainly because of the new movies that came out, but also with there being a documentary that took 5 years to create, to highlight all the amazing things that took place in the 1990s. How does it feel to be a part of that? Are you guys happy with the end result of the documentary as well?
Oh, definitely.
Yeah,
I've been hogging
definitely.
it. Jared, you go first, and then I'll.
Oh, yeah, sorry, Mr. Mixon. Yeah, no, I'll tell you something. When I was approached by Gary, and later I met John at a convention, I was a bit dubious as to uh, what their intentions were and what kind of quality that the end product would be. And then in discussing it with the gentleman, I realized that they have this um, substantial background in making of films,
Yeah.
and they were kind enough to provide me with copies of those films. One of their documentaries, which I think is absolutely brilliant and authoritative, is on Hellraiser Part 2, which is again, I think, a film that's completely underrated,
Yep.
and
I
is, again,
agree.
is experiencing a resurgence in terms of the appreciation for it. The the thing, yeah, I said this to my wife. I watched it 2 days ago, and I said, you know, I'm a huge fan of documentaries about the making of films. There's a great one on Blade Runner that came with the sort of definitive box set collection. I can't remember the title of it, but it's a 4 or 6 hour. Um, I'm fascinated by the process of making movies. So I said to my wife, the great honor of my life is to be in a film that's considered prestigious enough to warrant a making of documentary, and then to go on to have the documentary be such a lovely representation of both the filmmaker's work and of it ultimately as well. It's such a great honor to be involved. They say this to actors will say this all the time. If you're involved in one film that is remembered, then that's a career in and of itself. And yeah, as you mentioned, and also another thing I want to say is I hate CGI. I hate it. And for me to watch, for our film, I hope that's not too bold to state that, but to be a part of a film that was one of the last to utilize Mr. Mixon's great gifts in regards to, the makeups, etc., for it to be practical effects. I'm also very proud of that. I know people can point out the what they would consider to be the flaws of it, but that's what makes it special. Yeah, so.
Right, definitely. Just from my perspective, I mean, it's great to finally, have someone do such a thorough, deep dive into this. Even, again, I was surprised that they literally go back to King writing the book, that they start at the beginning, and so I don't know if I was expecting it to be that comprehensive, but I thought it was great that it was. And I do remember when the like when the DVD came out, and I'm like, oh, what special features are going to be on this? And it's like, oh, there's nothing. There's like a little, voice, director commentary, but there's
Yeah.
no behind the scenes stuff. And it's like, well, I'm sitting on, a stack of photos that, thick, and 2 hours of, behind the scene video that no one's ever seen. And so I'd done the Fright Night 2 documentary, with the Dead Mouse guys, and they'd also interviewed me for a RoboCop one, which hasn't come out yet, but I think it will shortly.
Yeah.
RoboDoc,
yeah.
which is a great name. But somewhere in that, in talking with him about that stuff, I mentioned, all the It stuff that I had. So I don't know if that kind of helped kind of ignite the, in the spark, to ignite the thing. But it's just nice, again, that there's 2 hours of footage, that I've got. And there's stuff on there like John Ritter, goofing around with the spider, him and Harry Anderson, puppeteering it, and, stuff with Tim, on set. And sadly, I didn't tape enough of us. I wish I just set up the camera and videotape the makeup process, but it didn't really occur to me at the time to do that. But yeah, there's a lot of stuff that otherwise, this stuff would have never been seen. So it's just great that there's an avenue for that. And again, it's certainly a film. I used to say, earlier in my career, when good movies were fewer and farther between that I'd get to work on, that I'd say it's nice to work on something you're not ashamed of. And, and it is certainly it falls in that category. And it's just nice to see this resurgence of, love for it. And it's all, I think, and mostly due to the remake, just kind of shining the light on the original again. There might have been a rights issues in the 90s and early 2000s, in terms of who actually owned the film. So I think that's why we didn't see like Movie Maniac action figures, from Todd McFarlane and stuff like that, which I always wish they would have done. But finally, once Warner Brothers had it and they were doing the remake, and then they were doing the reissue, and then suddenly there were, Pennywise, action figures and bobbleheads and all kinds of crap that I thought I would never see. So,
Yeah.
I'm loving it, going into the, at conventions or, Targets or wherever, and like, oh, there's a Pennywise t-shirt, there's an action figure, not that I get any residuals off any of that, but it's still kind of fun, to see your work, represented in in 3D like that, or so it's great.
Yeah. One of my favorite things too, Bart, about the documentary is how every time you're on screen, you're always wearing a different Pennywise shirt. I love that so much.
I was wondering if that would be obvious. So I didn't. I'm glad that wasn't lost, because I did when we shot it. I've just brought a big, I've got about 24 Pennywise shirts now, but I brought all the black ones. And then we'd do so much of the interview, then we'd take a little break and I'd switch into another one. And I have seen some clips where it's just even within the short clip, I go through a couple of them. So I'm glad somebody noticed. So cool.
Yeah, even John and Gary were talking about that too. Like, it was just so funny how Bart was changing his shirt like all the time. I'm like, yeah, I caught on to that. It's awesome. The love you have for what you worked on is.
Well, I started as a fan, so that is nice. I'm sure I'm one of the few lucky people who get to actually, be able to make a living off of something I would have done as a hobby anyway. So, or something I was doing as a hobby. So, I still enjoy, that aspect, of it. Again, like there's something about gluing rubber on somebody's head. I don't like getting up at 1:30 in the morning like I had to do yesterday for Ant-Man, but, doing a 15-16 hour day, that can kind of suck, but at least I'm working with friends. Exactly. I'm working on cool stuff that at least, again, like satisfies the fan in me, so it's it's like you're getting paid to play in your hobby. So what's not to like?
Well, I'm interested to know, man, have you ever had any like nightmare people in the chair that just won't sit still when you got to do this really intricate work? And I guess it's like a tattoo artist when the person just can't sit still and they're like,
I know I have. I mean, you tend to, the bad ones tend to fade away. I mean, guys like Kelsey Grammer were great. Jermaine Clement was great.
Right.
I have had people that, especially now that everybody's got a goddamn cell phone, a lot of people are like doing this while you're trying to make them up. A friend of mine did a makeup test on Steve Martin for Roxanne when he and the whole test, Martin's sitting there in a director's chair reading a newspaper, and this guy's having to come in from the side to try and get the nose on him. And then when he's done, he's like, oh, it looks crooked. And it's like, well, that's because I couldn't get in front of you. It's what I was doing. Which, I mean, sometimes you just gotta, tell them to, hey, put that crap down. I think I was doing a guy on, it was a Hellboy stunt double. And the first day I was trying to be kind of accommodating, and he was like playing a Game Boy and shit like that. And it just took like another hour or two more than it should have. And I'd say after that, I was just like, you got to put that thing down, and in a similar vein, on Men in Black 2, do you know Kevin Greavious? He wrote Underworld. He's kind of a big Michael Clark Duncan sized guy. He was in the Tim Burton Planet of the Apes. He was the third eye alien in Men in Black 2. But he's a big comic book fan. That when I first met him at Rick Baker's, I had a Black Bolt Fantastic Four t-shirt, and he's like, hey, Black Bolt. And I'm like, Jesus, nobody knows who Black Bolt is. So I did his initial makeup test for the third eye guy. And again, it took twice as long as it should have, because we were sitting there just shooting the shit about comic books. And I even had to tell him, I go, Kevin, I can't, I love you, but I can't do your makeup on the show because we were never going to make the deadline, So, but I know, I'm sure I've had people that have been, pains in the ass in the past, but again, I think I just tend to forget or not wish to remember them. So there's too many good times. So, but yes, I know there are some, and probably if I sat there and thought about it, but I don't mind talking a little shit about people, but I don't want to talk too much.
Yeah, let it loose sometimes.
Yeah.
So I know, especially for you, Jared, at this point, convention life is fairly new. Bart, I'm not sure about you, but how is convention life, treating you? Jared, we can start with you because I know, um, you've been going with all of the Kid Losers, to most of the conventions, correct?
Yeah. The first one was in Birmingham, and that was my very first experience at a convention, and I was more of a fan than a guest at the convention. To be honest with you, I didn't want to stay at the table. I wanted to
I don't
go,
blame you, man.
and yeah, I can't describe the feeling to you. It's you guys are all horror fans and probably avid readers of horror fiction. So you know that when you go into a bookstore or a library, you go into the horror section of any of those places. I don't know if you feel that same anticipation
Oh yeah,
as
for
if you're,
sure.
that's the same feeling I get when I go to a convention. Um,
Mm.
there's just not enough money and not enough time, obviously, when you're expected to be signing, etc., to go and really experience it. I almost envy the the fans for their freedom to walk about and just see all of the spectacular stuff, all of it which I want to have in my home. But my lovely wife is the boss and won't have any of it. So again, I'm looking at your guys' domiciles. I'm looking at your man caves, Mr. Mixon's especially, and I am so envious. But I've got to toe the line.
I'm a vendor at HorrorCons.
Oh, you are
So I
you?
get to, yeah, I'm there before anyone. I'm set when I'm setting
Oh,
up. I kind of set my stand up and then go for a little walk around and just see where I'm going to be spending all my money.
oh,
I
yeah,
do.
exactly.
I do like the for the love. I work with Monopoly events quite a lot for the for the love of horror. I think you.
Oh, okay, yeah. Absolutely.
We
No,
do those guys and the HorrorCon in Sheffield and any horror. We don't really have that many HorrorCons over here actually. There was the one in Leicester where I met your good self.
yeah,
At,
yeah,
2019, I believe.
yes, yeah. I believe that's the
I don't
case.
think
Yeah,
that. Yeah, they didn't do another one after that, and obviously had the pandemic in the way. So I think the only remaining horror cons we have over here, really decent ones, is the one in Manchester for the love of horror.
yeah. We
I
did
think
that as well.
you were a guest at that one, weren't you?
Yeah, it was incredible.
Last
Yeah,
year?
absolutely
Yeah,
astounding, massive.
that's a fantastic convention. That one.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think Tommy Lee Wallace is there this year actually.
Oh,
They've got
wonderful,
him this year. So looking
wonderful.
forward to meeting him. But have you ever had any sort of bizarre fan experiences at a convention? Have you ever kind of met anyone to come up to you and just thought,
Yeah,
okay.
my wife. My wife was with me at this particular time. I don't know why she tends to go and wander and take my son off for a bit of a sightseeing adventure. But this time she was standing at the table and a woman asked me to sign her arm, and I said, "Really, sign your arm?" And she said, "Yeah, I'm going to get it. I'm going to have it tattooed." And I said,
Yeah.
"Come on, I don't believe this for a second." And I'm not lying to you. I've got the picture somewhere. And the following day, she dutifully went out and had it tattooed on her arm.
Yeah.
Wow.
People are crazy, but in a good way.
She was polite. She was delightful, and yeah, it was just I couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Well, you win there. I got no stories like that.
Oh yeah, but come on, you're a superhero at those events, my friend. Come on, people have to be absolutely.
I've been going to conventions, as a fan since like 1972. But and again, like I said, that's where I met Rick Baker, and in fact, I think when he hired me for Men in Black 3, I was at a Monster Palooza, and Rick just walked up and
Oh wow.
he's like, "Hey, are you working?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "We are now." You know.
Oh wow.
But I haven't really been a guest that often at conventions. This last Monster Palooza this summer, Tim Curry was there doing like a photo op, and then they had me and someone from Legend there doing like a panel talking about working with Tim on those films. But there's one was a Wicked Weekend in Bangor, Maine, in end of September, beginning of October that I'm supposed to be going to. So that'll be
I was gonna ask you about that.
that'll be my
That'd be
first
great.
official, appearance like that. So ask me in ask me October 3rd, when it's all over. But I'm looking forward to it. It sounds like it should be fun. Because I bumped in Brandon was at Monster Palooza, and he was like, how come you don't do these? And I was like, oh, nobody asked me. So then he's like put me in touch with the proper people, and now they've asked. So
I would love to have you over here, Bart. Great,
love
great
that.
to see you over here, man. I can add you to my poster then.
There we go. I would love to
Can
go.
I ask a question?
Yeah, sure. Go ahead,
What-
man.
What, and maybe you guys are way more in the loop than I am, obviously, but what's happened to Rob Bottin?
He
Or is that if you can't answer the question, please don't.
the story I heard is that he just invested, and I can't even remember where. I wish I could remember exactly where I heard this, because you do hear a lot of rumors. I heard that he
Yeah.
basically got tired of the bullshit, just working with, the production. I mean, the film industry's changed a lot since I've been in it, since the early 80s, and it's even changed more since he, got into it in the late 70s. But I heard that he invested heavily into real estate in the east end of the valley, like out, he's like in Azusa and El Monte, and that he's just living comfortably off of his real estate investments that he still does. Is it Pitka? There's a commercial director, Joe Pitka, I think, that Rob will occasionally do commercial work for him because they're friends. And Rob's wife, it's either wife or girlfriend, they met on, she was the camera operator or camera assistant on RoboCop, and since become an item, and she was the camera, like the DP on Game of Thrones. So there is an effect in one episode of Game of Thrones that Rob had something to do with.
Okay.
But I think he just kind of, again, just does what he wants, and
Yeah, I think that's what I was hearing too.
Yeah.
Through some avenues online. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know I have coworkers that are friends with him. Like there's Margaret Prentice, who painted everything for him on like The Howling and The Thing and all this stuff. Her husband and Rob were high school buddies, and so she's still in that loop, but she's gets tired of people asking, like about 10 or 15 years ago, I was like, hey, what's going on with Rob? She's like, oh, I don't really want to talk about it. So I was like, okay. So, because that's just kind of like, it's family and personal and private stuff. So I don't even press her anymore. But,
Gotcha.
But so he's, I mean, he's around, he's, out on, again, the east end of the valley and just, doing what he wants.
Enjoying his life.
Yeah. But I mean, it's, again, selfishly, the fan in me, I hated to see him bow out because he was doing such amazing stuff.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
But I mean, I can understand. It's like when Rick Baker retired and people are like, oh, why did he do that? It's like, because he could.
Yeah.
And, it's just, things got to a point to where, if it wasn't fun anymore. And like, I know when he worked on The Wolfman, he didn't have a good time on that,
Yeah.
just the way the production was treating him, and and so yeah, it's like, hey, if you don't have to put up with this stuff, then and he can afford not to, then why? I mean, he's probably doing more work now since he retired, Rick, than he the years leading up to it. I mean, he does Halloween makeups for his family every year. I went over there a couple of years ago and helped him apply makeups to him and his daughters, for one Halloween, like around
That's cool.
2007,
Wow.
something like that. So it's just, they pretty much, they're doing what they want. But but he's certainly missed, because I mean, Rob in particular was, just pushing the envelope on,
Yeah.
Yeah, an innovator. Yeah.
and I mean, some really amazing stuff. That was so great working with him on RoboCop. And there was one weekend where he was in town, and for some reason, all the Robo crew, the Robo team, had gone to New Orleans because we were shooting in Dallas, and just Rob and I were left in Dallas. So, we went and saw Peggy Sue Got Married, and She's Gotta Have It. It had just come out. So, we're going to movies, we're going to dinner, just hanging out, having a good time. So, hey,
That's awesome.
a lot of fun, great guy, very funny. But yeah, just like, I guess he just got tired of the BS. So,
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Yeah, I've just heard a lot of rumors, and again, growing up, as a fan of those two gentlemen, and again, the interconnectivity of all three of you, Rick Baker, yourself, and Rob Bottin. It's just a fascinating community, and yeah, I appreciate the insight.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So hopefully I wish I could remember when I first heard the whole real estate thing. I wish I could remember, exactly where I heard it, because I hope I'm not perpetuating
I'm in another myth.
yeah, any misnomers there, but that's as I understand it, and I have heard it from various sources too. So I think that's I think that's pretty much what's going on. So
Fairly credible, yeah.
yeah, but
All right, Dean. Do you have anything else you want to ask before I ask our
Yeah, do you know
closing
what,
question?
whilst we got Jared's a question for you, Jared. I was wanted to ask you actually. It's about your character, Henry Bowers. You how did you get yourself into that character when you're on set? Because you come across as you're such a nice guy, and the
Oh,
character that
thanks.
you played, the character that you played was such a nasty piece of work. So how did you kind of channel that? You know, how did you get into that
Well,
sort of zone?
it started well before the actual filming, because I knew that I don't know what guys. I mean, I don't want to get quasi metaphysical about it, but as I said, I ducked classes to read Stephen King novels,
Mm.
and no word of a lie. It was my it seemed to be my sustenance through high school, which I found to be an extraordinarily uncomfortable experience for me. My dad was a real greaser. As a matter of fact, there's a
Oh, wow.
photograph of my dad from the late 50s, and it's featured on a record album by a not so well-known band, but the photograph itself is considered a classic and has gone on to be reproduced in a number of books, sort of documenting that era, which is the 50s fashion, automotive manufacturing, all of that. It's a classic era in American automotive engineering, etc. So my dad's featured in this photograph, and my father still had characteristics of that, his teenage years as a man as well. He still combed his hair up with Brill cream as I was a kid growing up. He had cut off sweatshirts. He had his own, I guess you could call them homemade tattoos. My dad was one of the toughest mothers I've ever met in my entire life, genuinely. And he was a very small man. And he would tell me stories. And again, a lot of what he had to do was compensatory as well, because when you're a small person, you've got to convey an inner strength that convinces people you're dangerous, so to speak. My father always told me this. He said, it's always the smaller guys you have to be aware of, because they fight to the death. They don't have the physical attributes, to back up their play, so to speak. So, yeah, I mean, we all have these characteristics within us. We've all been confronted by somebody that we've either disagreed with. We've all been bullied, and it's simply picking up on those characteristics that perhaps frightened us or intimidated us the most. And if I'm to look to an actor, I think I said it in the documentary, I don't think there's anyone more frightening than Dennis Hopper as Frank Booth in Blue Velvet.
Yeah.
Yeah, if that makes sense to you. But yeah, anyway, in terms of the preparation, I knew I had to go in there and do something different, because I didn't have the physical attributes. And as I predicted, when I went in for the auditions, I was surrounded by goons, by gigantic guys, and very stereotypical bully types. And I knew they're either going to go with the stereotype, or they're going to choose somebody distinctly different from that cliche. And I've never worked harder on anything in my entire life. 24 hours a day for the 2 weeks leading up to the audition. That's all I did, over and over and over and over again. And as I said, it was a rather miraculous experience, because I was plucked from that first audition. What life went from 0 to 100 miles per hour. It was amazing.
Amazing performance too.
Absolutely nailed it. Yeah.
Oh, thank you ever so much. I really appreciate you guys saying that.
Excellent. No, great. Very, very memorable in that. So yeah, great job.
Oh, thank you guys. It means a lot.
Yeah, I mean, everybody did such an amazing job on the film, whether you were acting on the screen or if you were behind and doing all the makeup like Bart was, or whoever was like operating the cameras or anything. The film is just it's legendary. It really is, and it's gonna live on forever, and everybody's, I think, always gonna go back to this one. Yeah, they might go and watch the new one And we also have, I think, what the Pennywise TV show that's going to be coming out too,
Yeah.
which I'm kind of like, I don't know how I'm going to feel about it, but I'm going to give it a chance. I know it's set in I think they said the 60s. They said it was going to be set around the same time. But yeah, this movie just it stands the test of time, and just how amazing it is, and everybody who worked on it. And thank you for creating something that really impacted me as a person, and for my love of horror, really, and broadening everything. It's truly amazing, and really an honor to talk to both of you, and everybody else that we talked to that was on the film. It's a dream come true.
It's an honor to
Absolutely.
be here with you guys. And Mr. Mixon, I just wanted to say again, I didn't really get a chance to. You were so busy, obviously, doing what you were doing with Tim, but I'm a huge fan of yours as well. I so appreciated the fact that you got to feature your incredible gifts as an artist, and to have your work celebrated along with Tim Curry's performance. I think it's been a long time coming, and well deserved. I'm a huge fan of yours as well, sir. Thank you so much.
Or thank you very much for saying so. That's great to hear.
Amazing.
Am I blushing? Am I? Thank you.
Good. Yeah, well deserved.
Thank you very much.
I guess one last thing I can ask, Jared. I don't think you're active in acting right now. You're kind of just living life to the fullest right now, correct?
Living life to the fullest. I'm a drug and alcohol counselor, my friend.
Oh, okay. Wow. Okay. So that's what you got going on. All right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I still get to act because I facilitate groups. I have a client base of about 60 clients. I live in jolly old England, and as you can imagine, alcohol supplants water in terms of yeah. But yeah, like I said, yeah, I the last thing I ever did, I did another project with Gabe, who was also featured in the documentary. He played Victor.
Yeah.
We did a version of the Ninja Turtles for one season. It was a live action series, and we had a blast
That's
playing
awesome.
a couple of Ninja Turtles. So that was fun. But the last thing I did was the last straw. I was kind of trying to find a way to extricate myself from the industry. Then on my very last audition, I got a part on a thing called The Crow, Stairway to Heaven. Now, I was a huge fan of the original Crow film. And I thought, okay, this would be a good way to go out. And I got to tell you something, it's probably one of the worst pieces of shit that I was embarrassed to be a part of it. And sad to say, that's when I made my my exit from the industry, but not on a high note, to say the least. I'm probably speaking out of turn, but again, I'm not involved in the industry anymore, so it doesn't really matter.
That's all right. You can be candid.
I could be, yeah, more so than you, sir.
Definitely.
Yeah.
What about you, Bart? I know you were talking about doing some work on the new Ant-Man movie, but is there anything else that you got going on in the background that you want to tell everybody about?
Well, the Robo Doc coming out again from the same guys that did the Pennywise. So looking forward to that because we shot that before so that was 6 years ago. But let's see what I just worked on the new Guardians of the Galaxy, both the holiday special and the movie, so that'll be out next May. Got the Haunted Mansion, Disney's remake of that. So that's coming out. I think that might be out this October. There's a Jeffrey Dahmer miniseries from Ryan Murphy that I worked on a little. A show called Babylon, which the guy that did La La Land, his next movie. So I was on that for a handful of days. Seems like a lot of stuff I'm doing these days is I'm working with friends, so it's which is great. It is, and it's a lot of, like when I did Bad Grandpa, this friend of mine, Steve Prouty, who was in charge of it, he just called up and he goes, "Hey, you want to help me?" And and this other guy do a makeup on, I don't even think he told me it was on Knoxville. I just I'm going to be working.
That movie's so funny.
It's like, I don't care what it is. And then Knoxville was just like the icing on the cake. And he's another guy like Jermaine Clement that I keep in touch with. We always send off colored text to one another, and
that's awesome.
That kind of thing's cool. Where it's like, well, I never thought I would be pals with people like that. So that's that's always fun. Yeah, nothing. I don't know what the next thing is. I know again, the fan in me would love to work on the new Fantastic Four. If there's some place for me on that, I did Michael Chiklis's makeup on the one from the early 2000s. So
really?
Wow.
that was my all-time favorite comic book, and so the Jack Kirby run. So if I could, work on I think once the MCU, gets their hands on it, we ought to get the movie that we should have gotten all along. So that would
Oh,
be great.
great.
So, but did you see the Chickless Fantastic Four?
I did. I think your work is extraordinary.
Thank you. The Spectral
It's just
Motion created the stuff. So yeah, but it's a great.
excellent work. The film itself, unfortunately, just falls short.
It does, but I thought it was much better than the 2015 one.
Yeah.
So, and I think a lot of it was hamstrung by just budgetary restraints. I mean, it was like, I think an $80 million, movie, and like the Sam Raimi Spider-Man was 200 million. And then,
Yes.
So it's like, there's only so much you can do. I mean, and I hate to, budget does play a part in it. I don't know if you guys saw the Inhumans.
I did, yeah.
Okay, which was unfortunate, but when you look at if they tried to make Guardians of the Galaxy for the same money they spent on the Inhumans, you would not have had the same movie. You wouldn't have been able to, you wouldn't have been able to populate this world with all these characters. I mean, the Guardians movies are pretty unique in that everybody in that movie has got some kind of character makeup, prosthetic makeup, something, and even half the time, Chris Pratt's got something on. So it's rare that literally everybody in the frame, and you can't do a complete original world like that on a shoestring budget. So,
Right.
I mean, there's also just a bad script and shit like that comes into it too. But but again, so like the Chickless Fantastic Four, I it would have benefited from more money. It may not have been a great movie, but they didn't even have the money to do the proper set pieces that they wanted to do. And I remember we were doing reshoots on it, and I'd be like, well, like you've got Reed Richards like walking across the room to pick something up. Why doesn't he just stretch and pick it up? And they go, oh, we don't have the money for that.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there you go. So anyway, I'm fingers crossed, and I'm hoping that we finally
Get to revisit it.
Yeah, and get the one that the Kirby fan in me has been wanting to see since 65. So, we shall see. But yeah, so hopefully there'll be a few more fun things like that. But it's unfortunately it's kind of a slow period right now, so there's not a lot going on.
Well, you're definitely putting hands into everything you can at this point, and it's really awesome to see you active. That's the main thing, is being active in something and you're doing what you love.
Definitely. Again, like I said earlier, it's nice to be able to do something for a living that you're a fan, that you enjoy doing, and I'll bitch about having to get up at 1 o'clock in the morning, but it's still, it's still fun, and that kind of stuff. So yeah, as long as there's that. So yeah, I got a few more years in me. So
awesome. And this was an absolute blast. I don't know if you have any closing statements or anything you want to do before I close this out.
Oh, I guess I've just got one more question for you, Bart, because we were talking earlier on about like all the body of work that you've done, all the incredible things that you've done. What would you say has been like the most challenging for you, the piece that you've done, or film movie that you worked on? I mean, you've done so much, it's probably hard to pinpoint anything. But is there anything that stands out where you think, man, that was hard, that was hard work, that was challenging?
Well, I mean, stuff like Fright Night 2 and It. Because those were my shows. I mean, I was, even though I was running the Creature Shop for Fantasy 2, but I was in charge. I was responsible, particularly like on Friday Night 2. I did the bulk of the makeup effects, but Greg Canham, who was certainly an established name at that point, he did a couple of characters. So like my stuff had to, be on the screen with his. So I had to make sure that, my stuff was as, comparable, So, I mean, those were, and just the like logistically something like It, where we were building it in Burbank and shipping it to Canada, and that big spider. I don't think any of us had built anything that massive, at that time. I mean, that was, before Jurassic Park and all that stuff, or, now they build all kinds of huge stuff, or they did until digital knocked it all out.
Yeah.
But so, yeah, I mean, in terms of just, having to run the show and being responsible for it, I mean, those were certainly some, I think Fright Night and It turned me completely gray. I think I started going gray on one, and the other one, completed it. So that kind of stuff, but I mean, there's been certainly difficult makeups, like I worked on the Ring movies, the little, dead girl
Yeah.
in the well. And I mean, those were like
Yeah.
5-hour applications that, 3 or 4 of us doing. So, I mean, those were,
Oh, okay.
involved makeups, but it wasn't my show. So there's a certain, whenever you just kind of show up and go, okay, well, where's the stuff,
Yeah.
I'm putting
Yeah.
on? And it's, it's not my responsibility to get it there. It's just my responsibility to apply it and make sure it looks good.
Yeah.
So that's a certain burden that's, relieved when you're not, but I do miss doing my own shows. I mean, again, when I was things like it, where it was my project and it was my design and my sculpture, I mean, that's certainly rewarding, but there's the good and the bad, that
Yeah.
it's the old, with great power comes great responsibility kind of stuff.
Absolutely.
But anyway, so yeah, I don't know if that fully answered your question, but
Oh yeah, man, definitely. You were talking about, Jared, you mentioned earlier on about how you hate CGI. I'm not a fan of CGI. And actually, I recently met the guy who was the Marshmallow Man in Ghostbusters, Billy Bryan.
Oh yeah, Bill Bryant.
Oh,
Bill Bryan, yeah, really, really nice guy he was, and we were chatting about that as well. And he was telling me it's quite funny that there's actually a scene in Ghostbusters where he was wearing the Marshmallow Man costume. If you freeze frame it, split second, he's just wearing a regular T-shirt. You can see it like between the buildings in New York. I thought that was quite funny. But yeah, he was saying about how much he dislikes CGI as well. We were having that conversation.
it's not only ruined live action films; it's ruined animation as well. I simply it's ruined every aspect of film for me. I'm sorry, I don't want to sound like a hardliner, but as I've said, I'm revisiting classics now in order to get my fix of what I truly love about cinema, either in live action or in animation. I don't like it at all.
There's some films I just hope they never remake, because like, for example, I'm a huge fan of Labyrinth. I love that movie.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And you just
don't
know
touch
for
it.
a fact that if they ever remake that, it's just going to be so CGI heavy, and of course no David Bowie. But
Yeah.
I mean, it would be
Yeah.
too CGI heavy. It'd be horrible to see that, and just
Well, it's the old what was it, Cinefantastique magazine that's unfortunately no longer with us, but they used
Great,
to
yes.
refer to the sense of wonder. And like
Yes.
a friend of mine did the miniatures on Independence Day. And so when they're blowing up New York and you're like, Jesus Christ, how did they do that? And you're trying to picture this stage with all these models, and like when some of the fireballs were going down the street, they had to hang them at a 90-degree angle so that when the fire went up, it and then they it looked like it was going left to right, but it was really going up and down. And then you watch something like San Andreas, where like LA's fallen to pieces, and you're just like,
it's like watching a computer game.
Yeah.
Totally nonplussed.
Yeah, it's not like, oh, how did they do that? No, I mean,
Yeah.
I do like the digital stuff like Pan's Labyrinth, where you got Doug Jones in that goat costume, and then they digitally, he had like the goat legs in front of his legs, and then they took his legs out so that, so I think when you use it as a tool to enhance,
Yes.
things like that,
Good point.
it's great. And like when we did Men in Black 3, on the first 2 Men in Blacks, Rick built these characters like top to bottom, where any one of these characters could have done a whole movie. And Barry Sonnenfeld would literally pan past it and go like, okay, I've seen it, I don't want to see it again. That's it. So we'd have spent hundreds of thousands of dollars and months worth of work. So on the third one, Rick was like, well, I'm going to build this head, and it's not going to have anything in it mechanically. And if you're on it long enough to where it needs to blink, then the digital guys can make it blink. And the digital supervisor was actually a high school friend of Rick's. So he wasn't there trying to screw us. He was actually there to work with us.
Yeah.
So it was a nice, melding of the two departments. We would take it this far, then this guy would enhance it. Or like I did Paul Bettany for Infinity War and Civil War, and that's a certain degree of makeup, and then they go in and all the geometry in his face is done digitally. Like his eyes look like camera lenses, and so like I think that's kind of a cool amalgam of the two. But too often you just get like, we'll just do it all CGI, and then you just get a mess. You have movies like was it in Rogue One, where they had the Peter Cushing, the digital Peter Cushing in. And as I understand it, they didn't even try to do a makeup. They just said, you know what, we're just going to do it CGI. So it's like, we're automatically going to do I think that cost $6 million to do the digital Peter Cushing. And it's like,
Wow.
why don't you try the, you know, $200,000 or $300,000 approach?
Yeah. Save
know,
some
with the
money
makeup.
somewhere.
Well,
Yeah.
try it. And if it needs some digital augmentation, you know, there's certainly, you know, makeup is an additive thing. You can't subtract. So if you need to make him a little gaunter, you could digitally squeeze him a little or
Yeah.
whatever. But at least why don't you start with something that's tangible and physical, and then take it, you know, and use the digital to augment it. And I did another, I don't want to bore you guys too much with these stories.
No, I
but,
love this. I love
That's
it.
great.
Don't be silly, man. That's why you're here.
The Goosebumps movie that came out a few years ago. They had these alien characters in it, and the director was a digital guy. I think he came from, you know, digital cartoons. But they had these alien characters that for the whole shoot, they had like a green sock on their head and they had these green foam core hands. So any shot that they're in, even if they're out of focus in the background, they had to digitally add these heads and these hands because of this green shit. And then before we wrapped the show, they decided they were going to do a Comic-Con appearance and they wanted one of these aliens there. So somebody made a mask to go, you know, over the head, and they made these hands. And then the producer sees it, you know, and he goes, "You mean we could have been shooting with this the whole time? And just done the digital when it, you know, when it mattered and when it needed to be digital." And again, all these shots where it's in the background, out of focus, that could have been. And it's like, yeah, it could have been. And just that somebody doesn't even take that approach. They don't say, well, let's, you know, do the economical, and then let's do this other thing, you know, when we have to. And I just can't. I don't understand that, you know. But
Yeah.
I'm not making those decisions. You know.
Good point.
Another thing is the aliens movies. I mean, like, you can't beat the original cut. You know, with they're using actual costume.
Yeah.
Suits,
Yeah.
aren't they?
Man in the suit.
Cameron's Aliens and the original Ridley Scott one. And whereas the later Alien films are pretty much all CGI, and it's nowhere near as good as the original ones for me.
No, not even
Yeah.
close.
I'm right there with you.
Way
man.
more effective.
Yeah, I mean, there's that shot in Cameron's Aliens where they look up in the crawl space in the ceiling and they're all
Oh man,
yeah, it
that's
just looks like a bunch of roaches swarming you. But that's all practical, and it's, you know,
Incredible,
and then you see, like, what is it, Alien 3 or 4, where it's all digital and
Yeah.
hopping around, and you're just like, who cares? You know, there's no weight to it. There's no, it just lacks the tangible, you know. But again, but at least in the alien stuff, they still, you know, they'll do a mix. I mean, the first Jurassic Park I thought was a good example of.
Yeah.
I think there were 6 minutes of digital dinosaurs in that. So you know, like a 2-hour movie, and you know, and again, I haven't done the math. What is 6 minutes of 120 minutes is, you know, that's like a, you know, 0.5 or something. And again, they just do it where they need it, and then the rest of it with Stan Winston stuff, you know. And I think that's why that one's still the best one, you know. But it's just a question of using the right tool for the right job.
Exactly, and that's how I view it too.
Yeah.
This was a blast. Thank you, Bart and Jared, for, you know, taking some time out of your day. I know it's late on Dean and Jared's part, but
It's been great.
It was awesome. And
thank you guys. I'm a fan of your show, like I said, and
thank you.
And just I think it's about time that Mr. Mixon has been celebrated to this extent for his incredible and indelible contribution to the horror genre with his creature Pennywise. It's absolutely amazing. I'm just thrilled for him. So, and thrilled to be a part of the whole film. And thank you for taking the time, guys.
Well, I mean, thank you for, you know, agreeing, and now I can call both of you friends. This is another thing that's so crazy about doing, you know, a podcast and having guests on, is like realizing like you just made a connection with these legendary people to yourself. Like both Jared and Barton, you guys are legends to me and to Dean. It's
absolutely, man. Yeah, we do a lot of film reviews as well, man. So you've been a big horror fan, Jared. It'd be great to have you on down the line, just come and chat.
Anytime. I would love to do that.
Perhaps.
Same with you, Bart. If you have time and you want to come on and discuss movies, like we
Sure.
always open it up for our guests, whoever they are. You know, if you want to come on and discuss a movie,
I would love to. Shoot me an email anytime, guys. I would love it.
Man.
you got it.
Same here, yeah. And if you know, like, you know, you want to talk about anything else I've worked on, I'm an open book.
For sure, man.
Pretty much. So yeah, no, this was fun. I always enjoy doing these. This was certainly one of the more pleasurable experiences I've had on some of these podcasts. So yeah,
that really makes me so happy because every person who comes on here says the exact same thing you just said, Bart. Because I don't know what it is with other people like doing their shows. Like I don't know how they're running it or whatnot. But when people come on here and say this was something I really enjoyed, and like I haven't really had this experience with other shows or whatever it may be, it makes me feel really good that I'm doing a good job. So thank you.
Well, it's again, it's like you're talking to fans and people who have seen it and appreciate it, and you know, and I've done some others which you just get some of these kind of like oddball questions. It's like, well, what the hell that even got to do with with what we're here talking about? But no, I mean it does show, and not just from the background, But yeah, no, you can tell that you guys are legitimate fans of and have an interest in this sort of stuff. So it's great to talk to fellow fans. So
definitely, we're looking forward to it because we don't get Screenbox over here in the UK at the minute, and you can only get the Pennywise doc on Screenbox at the minute. So we've got. I think we're chatting to the guy from Screenbox next week, Dustin, right?
Yes, we are.
He's going to give us a bit more of an insight as to when they're looking, because obviously we get Shudder over here. No Screenbox yet. I'm trying to get it on the VPN, but yeah, it'll be great when the Pennywise doc comes out over here in the UK for everyone to see as well.
Yeah, we got a screener for Dean. Gary sent us one over, so he was able to watch it that way. But yeah, Screenbox is amazing right now, and that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
So, well, let us hear from you once you've seen it. I'm sure you'll love it. So it's I'm glad they finally got.
Oh no, I have actually seen it. Yeah, Gary sent me a screener through of the doc, but I'm just seeing the documentary. Yeah, I'm just for everybody else, because we've I think this is the third episode we've sort of been championing.
No, that's true. Yeah.
Documentary. So I think for all the people that are listening in the UK, they're like, I really want to see this documentary now. But
it's worth it.
Right.
Yeah.
3 hours of pure goodness. It's great. It's so good.
Yeah.
I've watched it, I think maybe we got the screener a while ago, so I watched it I think twice from that, and then like another 3 off of Screenbox. Every time I watch it, I'm learning something completely new that I missed, and hearing it from everybody talking about their own experiences and whatnot is a blast.
Yeah, I saw it and loved it. I was real happy with it. But yeah, I think it might be time for me to watch it again.
Let's all do it tonight. Let's all just throw it on. Go watch a watch party.
It must be great reliving all of that as well, watching that back, and it's just like it's like an old home movie, isn't it? Just watching part of your life,
Definitely, yeah. It is weird. There's some stuff I've worked on, like RoboCop's been on TV a lot lately too, and there'll be certain scenes where it's like, I remember that like it was yesterday.
Yeah.
And there's other scenes where you're like, I have no memory of that whatsoever.
Yeah.
But just certain stuff just will trigger whatever memory, and it's like, oh my God. I mean, you guys were talking about them dropping the balloons out the window with the Kool-Aid on RoboCop when we were in Pittsburgh. It was Halloween, and we were throwing pumpkins out of our windows. So it's just certain things. It is great, to just to relive that stuff, and again, it's just nice that people.
That's another movie that's very, very close to my heart, RoboCop, man. I think that and Aliens were the first two, as a kid, the first two 18 certificate movies that I ever watched when I can't remember, I was quite young. But yeah, RoboCop, another fantastic movie.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That'll be our next podcast.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Once that drops, for sure, we'll definitely talk about that. But cool. I'll go ahead, Bart.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I didn't know if you had anything to say.
Oh no, I think that was it. I'm good.
Okay.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, seriously, thank you for being on here, and we'll let everybody off the hook right now. And our DMs are always open. Just whenever you want to come on and promote something or talk about something, or you want to come on the show and talk about a movie, Jared or Bart, just let us know. I can send you some movies that we're doing this year. Or
love to. I really would love to.
Yeah, you got it, man. I'll send you the list. I'll send it to you tomorrow, so that way it's a fresh day. That it's not so late for you. So I'll do that tomorrow for you. And Bart, I'll do the same for you as well.
Cool. Sure. That'd be great.
This was a blast, and thank you for taking the time out of your day to come and do this.
Yeah,
thank you guys.
All right. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. Keep up the great work as well. Keep up the fantastic work, Bart.
Oh yeah.
Will do.
This was
Take
the
care, guys.
Barrens. Oh, thank you. This was the Barrens Hideout podcast. I was your host, Dustin.
And I was your co-host, Dean.
And we will catch you guys on the next one.